All right, I'm actually pretty excited about this. That's my political nerdy side. We're gonna. Well, I think this was kind of inspired because we wanted to talk about Shulkin, who's the Department of Veteran Affairs Administrator or Director, whatever, Secretary, whatever they call it.
Secretary, yeah.
He's a secretary. He's officially called a secretary. Okay. And he's been wrapped up with some stuff that's been in the news. I know about it because of Walter Schaub, the former White House ethics lawyer. Who I know
Office of Government Ethics, yeah.
Yeah, and he's an awesome follow on Twitter. We've maybe talked about him before. And he's kind of big on this one. And we can get into the specifics of Shulkin in a second, but we wanted to talk about that, and then I think you had the idea, like, well, pretty much the whole cabinet has issues.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, let's get into it. Who do you want to start with? Start at the top of the list.
I was kind of thinking, well, let's start with the cleanest people.
Okay.
Jeff Sessions and Mad Dog Mattis are probably the least corrupt people in the entire cabinet.
So, is there anything about Mattis that we'd question?
Let me open this again. The one thing that I see is that he was, trying to find which defense company or defense contractor he worked for. Oh yeah, General Dynamics. He was a board member of General Dynamics. But that's about the most controversial position that he has.
Yeah, and it's probably, honestly, and this is not a good thing, but it's probably hard to hire, not that you have to have a general, of course, for Secretary of Defense, but, I mean, don't all ex-generals pretty much get involved in...
Yeah, they graduate to advanced positions in the national security establishment.
Yeah, I mean, but I think a lot of them get involved in the industry of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is, building weapons and marketing them to our officials.
And even beyond corruption, I mean, it does make sense, of course. I mean, who would know more, I guess. But anyway, and so then Sessions, I mean, he's in the news a lot. I would imagine anyone listening knows the issues with him, like his hand in firing Comey, even though he was supposed to be recused. I mean, was there anything new, novel that stuck out, or something you don't think was reported much?
No, just off of his financial disclosure, he's easily the least complicated cabinet official. He has a couple of pieces of property that apparently are used for timber, and another farm or something that he owns in Alabama, but a lot of his assets are actually clean. He apparently reinvests a lot of his money into municipal bonds for various towns and counties in Alabama.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and actually downright clean compared to the other people.
Okay, so let's move on to the people with, like, I don't know, like a little bit.
All right, a little bit. Rex Tillerson, I guess would be the little bit. His, I couldn't find his financial disclosure.
Oh, shit. Go ahead, sorry. Couldn't find his financial disclosure.
No, but he doesn't seem to have any of the outstanding corruption charges that are so typical of the other cabinet officials. I think, what was it, last month? Or a couple of weeks ago, a group of organizations like Crew and some other ethics people in Washington sent him a letter about not recusing himself when he has a direct, conflict of interest from his time as a CEO of ExxonMobil. But that's almost a date compared to some of the other stuff.
Yeah, and I guess with Tillerson, it's... I don't know if I... To be fair, though I don't really care about being fair to the former CEO of Exxon, but I think he divested himself of a lot of his financial ties to Exxon. So, I mean, he can at least make that argument that he's no longer currently benefiting, but I think when he spent his entire career
40
with
years,
Exxon.
yeah.
I mean, so if he didn't have a little piece of his heart still with the company, that would actually be a little weird.
Right, and ExxonMobil has extensive business ties with other countries like Libya and Russia.
Of course, yeah, with Russia, yeah. All right, so then That's Tillerson. So yeah, nothing too, like, we don't need pitchforks yet.
No. Then we have Alex Azar.
Oh, yeah, this guy.
He is a... I mean, after Tom Price got kicked out for, being the poster boy of the first-class flight syndrome.
And let's make sure to, just make that clear, is that the first person who had this job as Secretary of Health and Human Services is gone for flight issues. Although it's not even why. I mean, he got approved with the knowledge that he had these financial investments in pharmaceutical companies, I believe.
Yes.
But that was fine. Some flights are bad, but that was fine.
Yeah, I don't understand Congress, but whatever.
Yeah, well, he was a congressman, and a lot of them are invested as well.
Sure. But the new guy, Alex Azar, is kind of cut from the same cloth. He's not quite as rich, but he is just as much of an industry insider. Apparently, he didn't even know anything about the health industry before he was Deputy Secretary of HHS.
Okay.
And then he went from that to being General Counsel. No, he was General Counsel of HHS under George Bush. And then he went from that to become the top lobbyist for Lilly, a huge pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like his training is... Or not training, that's not the word. But his specialty is lobbying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's...
So I have this Hill article open, and quote, "That being said, in many ways, Azar's actions are even more morally repugnant than those of Martin Shkreli." End quote. So, yeah.
Are we looking at the same article? I've got a different article that also starts with that.
I have a different one, and it's about raising prices of some drugs.
Oh, yeah, like fucking, what is it? Oh, yeah, that little one called insulin that some people rely on.
Yeah. Yeah, so he raised the price of insulin medication, and the article is comparing that to Shkreli, who did it for, if I'm reading
kind
this
of
toxoplasmosis, it looks like.
Right, some kind of, not necessarily, more obscure drugs that he could buy easily.
Yeah. And so, this position is now on its second corrupt individual, with conflicts of interest. Has he done anything well?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't seen... I couldn't find anything about any corruption that he's particularly involved in, but I have a feeling that's more of the fact that journalists are distracted with other overarching corruption concerns. And
yeah, I think we're going to find that in a few of these, where it's not departments that have a lot of journalists sniffing into them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, who's next?
Labor, Alex Acosta.
Oh, yes.
Rene Alexander Acosta. This guy is one of the richest on paper.
Okay.
According to his financial disclosure. He was Dean of the College of Law for Florida International University. He didn't get rid of his assets. Didn't divest his assets. In the way that some of these other people do. But, He got bank warrants from U.S. Century Bank and then a whole bunch of money. Wow, okay, anyway. Wait, no, this guy isn't the richest on paper. It was, sorry, it's tough to keep these Alexes straight. Alex Azar is the richest person. This guy apparently only has, like, a few $1,000s. But
that's kind of crazy, by the way, just to step back to that Azar. I mean, as a lobbyist and bureaucrat, one of the richest. I mean, that's not normal.
Well, and the weird thing about, maybe Alex Acosta paid off his house when he moved, but according to his financial disclosure, he had very little money in his bank account, but still had, according to my calculations, about somewhere between $1 and $2 million of mortgage on his personal house, which apparently, at least $1 million of which has been refinanced and paid in full. Oh, okay, I see. He rolled it over into a different loan. Interesting.
Okay.
But I don't know what the basis of that is, considering he doesn't have any income or assets that would, that he would be able to borrow off of in any typical loan. So yeah, I guess he's not quite as corrupt.
Yeah.
All right. Now that we've gotten through him, let's start digging into some of the more. Kirsten Nielsen.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, I couldn't find any information on her either.
And she would be one of the ones that, just on the surface, I would think would be probably one of the safer bets, just because she's been in government, getting security, high-level security clearances for years.
Mm-hmm.
She seems like a safe bet to not have at least glaring things that we would find from internet searches.
Right. Her positions that she held outside of the government include apparently a civil expert for NATO, chair of the World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council on Risks and Resilience. Also a member of the Global Risks Report Advisory Board for the World Economic Forum. And I don't know why she lists this, but prominently she lists her status as a volunteer for Trump for America Incorporated, which apparently is a nonprofit. Interesting side note.
She was during the election?
Let's see, November 2016 to January 2017. I don't even know what the point of that volunteering for that period of time would be, other than to
was that an inauguration thing?
Maybe, but it starts in November? I don't know. It's weird.
He got elected in November.
Yeah, I suppose. She has her own consulting company, which she says has no accounts receivable or unpaid client fees, and there will be no consulting while she's at work for them. And then she apparently consults for a whole alphabet of not prestigious companies, but very valuable companies like Deutsche Bank, Booz Allen Hamilton, Deloitte Consulting, the World Bank Group. Yeah, it's...
okay.
And then she has about $100,000 in her bank account, and mortgages worth between $600 and $1.25 million.
That sounds like a lot to me.
Yeah.
For a government employee.
So not the swampiest of people in here, but
yeah. Okay.
All right. Who should we go to next? Rick Perry?
Yeah, because I don't really know. I mean, the only thing I know about him since he's taken office is hugging that coal executive, and then didn't they came down hard on whatever photographer took the picture or whatever?
Yeah, that guy lost his job for it.
Yeah.
I think he was a government employee, like the Department of Energy's photographer.
Yeah. Yeah. Go. Okay, so what do we know about him?
According to his financial disclosure, he is not very wealthy.
Really? Rick Perry's
put it up.
I mean, hopefully he wouldn't be being governor for... I think he's the longest-serving Texas governor ever.
Yeah, I see him. But he also ended that in acrimony because he was convicted of a crime that got overturned on appeal.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's got not very many assets.
Okay.
Like, he's written a couple of books. He has $9,000 a month retirement from the Texas or Employees Retirement System of Texas.
That's pretty good.
And he's made various amounts of money from honorariums, consulting fees for McKenna and Associates and other interesting people. His sources of income are from McKenna and Associates. Energy Transfer Oh, there it is. That's what. Energy Transfer Partners is Bob Murray's company, the guy he was seen hugging.
And Bob Murray is coal.
He's CEO of Energy Transfer Partners.
Okay.
He's made a bunch of money giving speeches to ALEC and their Texas group.
Okay.
He has more loans than most of the other people in the cabinet. Like over $1 million mortgage on his residence, $250,000 mortgage on an investment property, capital commitment. What does that even? Oh, he must be invested in that. And then he has a student loan. Must be his child's or something.
I just haven't got around to paying that one off yet.
Yeah. He has apparently one checking account worth no more than $50,000.
And I think it's worth noting that he had no idea what his department did before he took the job. So you have to think, well, why did he get nominated for the job? And I think the coal industry and oil industry ties are pretty obviously why.
Right. He was like, oh, I think we should disband this entire department. Then he became in charge of it and was like, oh, God, we protect the nuclear weapons.
I mean, and it's not just that quote he had from that presidential debate a while back. He was saying right around the time of his nomination. And then afterwards, he's like, wow, I looked into it, and this is a really important department. Oh I had no idea. I mean, he wasn't hiding his ignorance, which,
Doesn't Texas have a Department of Energy, I assume, since they make so much of it?
Yeah, but they wouldn't have that nuclear regulatory aspect. Which I think is...
it's like only a small part of what the Department of Energy does anyway.
Yeah, but I think that's part of what he didn't know about.
Well, he was an agricultural sciences graduate, so...
Yeah. All right, who's next?
Let's see. I feel like we should save Zinke and Ross for last.
What about, let's
Ben
get...
Carson?
Yeah, because that one's been in the news lately. We can... Well, there's two things that he had. So one, he's been hiring family members, right?
His son and wife apparently have been instrumental in him doing the office. Like, he had that one meeting in Baltimore, or public town hall or whatever, that his son organized, even though he's not, like, a government employee or in any way related to the department. And the son also, Ben Carson, put in touch with Elaine Chao, because his business is somehow related to transportation, and so they're using their inside connections. The article I read, or the author of the article I read, said that the person couldn't find any follow-up, like if they actually spoke, but I don't know, the appearance of corruption is kind of notable.
No, definitely.
And then, of course, he spent like over $150,000 on office furniture when the maximum allowed by the government is $5,000 for new office renovations.
Mm-hmm. And he is heavily invested in the furniture industry. No, I just made that one up.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. He might be. I don't know.
He might be. He's another one I couldn't find his financial disclosure for him.
And that's a real shame, since he was running for, not that he would have won, but running for president. And, Trump set, Trump set a tone for all of these people. Some of them follow it more than others, of course, but there's like a trickle-down effect going on here with financial impropriety.
Right, there's some virtue signaling. Like in the first year, do you think any of those people would have gotten first class or privately chartered planes if they didn't see Trump bilking the government dry at every possible opportunity?
Yeah.
Living a comfortable life on the government's dime?
Well, and just hiring the richest cabinet in history.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're used to.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 billionaires in this list?
Well, and the ones who aren't are I'm not saying they're all fantastically wealthy. Clearly, we've talked about a couple who aren't, but
they all want to be.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
The American way. All right, who's next? Sonny Perdue. You didn't have anything. We didn't talk about him yet.
Well, actually, he's kind of clean. I looked into him. Yep. He had a lot of corruption scandals when he was governor of Georgia.
Yeah.
And then
pretty bad stuff. Look it up.
But, yeah, like terrible. But in his duties as a cabinet or member of the cabinet specifically, we haven't found anything.
Okay.
Other than the fact that he owns apparently a shipping company that has rights through the Port of Savannah, which I assume imports and exports agricultural products.
Okay. So yeah, he's pushing for a lot of peanut exports, so he can. I don't know that he's doing that. I'm joking again. I shouldn't make up fake corruption. So let's talk about Chow.
Elaine Chao, Mitch McConnell's wife.
Secretary of the Department of Transportation.
One of the richest people in the cabinet, and probably one of the most corrupt.
Okay.
For instance, she did not divest herself from the stock in a building company who... Let me pull it up here. The name of it. But as Secretary of Transportation, she's going to have an instrumental... Oh, Vulcan Materials, right. She has an instrumental role in determining, what kind of materials are used for which projects.
Okay, yeah. Of course, yeah.
Of course. Her financial disclosure is kind of complicated. Let me pull that up too, sorry.
Which, by the way, this is, again, the wife of the Senate Majority Leader.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling she was picked just so that Trump would have some interest over her. Okay, so let's start by going over which company she was a director for. She's a Distinguished Fellow of the Heritage Foundation, a Director of News Corp, a Director of Wells Fargo and Company, a Director of Ingersoll Rand, a Director of Vulcan Materials. She has a revocable trust. Wait, how is that? Oh, she's a trustee of her own trust. Oh, whatever. She made a salary of $1,250,000 from the Heritage Foundation, about $230,000 from News Corp, $200,000 from Ingersoll Rand, and in a payout of entire balance of deferred compensation plan for directors, made about more than $500,000 from Protective Life Insurance. All right, and then she's got common stock from Wells Fargo, deferred stock compensation from Wells Fargo.
Oh, God. Stop saying Wells Fargo so much.
Yeah, she's... Like, judging from her income, she's... Well, okay, I will say this. At least she listed all of her income.
Okay, yeah.
We'll get to that in a second, but yeah, she's at least clear in her financial disclosure form, even if it does paint kind of a terrible picture of her.
Okay.
Because she has, 15 different companies that she made more than $5,000 from last year?
I think it's fair to say that she and McConnell you would put up as examples of the swamp.
Yeah.
The quote-unquote swamp that we've heard so much about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a big wide open bridge between business and government.
Right, because her family, she's also involved in her family's company still, which is a huge shipping company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, again, is which would be relevant to her position as Secretary of Transportation.
Yeah.
She's also one of the richest people on paper, or probably the second richest in the cabinet on paper, with millions and millions of dollars in cash and bank accounts. One thing that I found interesting is that nobody reported any transactions in their financial disclosures.
What do you
like divesting of assets or selling them off or things of that nature.
Yeah, because that would be a way to get I divested. Well, how much did you divest for? Who did you divest it? Who did you sell it to?
Did you sell it to your family trust so that you could continue to make money off of that while not having it directly connected to you?
Well, or did it sell for more than it was worth? kind of like money laundering, like laundering of real estate. Like, did someone?
We can talk about with Zinke too. He's got a terrible case of that.
Well, let's move on to Zinke. I mean, Chow's pretty,
All right, so Ryan Zinke, perhaps the most corrupt person in a cabinet of corrupt people.
The whale of whitefish.
The whale of whitefish. I really want to go to Whitefish, Montana, as it seems to be a source of a lot of terrible people.
I think we'd be picked up at the city limits and never seen from again.
I mean, in some cases, they seem like nice people, but they also produce Ryan Zinke and Richard Spencer.
Yeah, and that energy company that was involved in...
Whitefish Energy, or whatever it was, yeah.
Whatever they were. Involved in Puerto Rico, and that weird contract, and... Yeah.
Let's see, let me poke this up. One thing, to note that weird money laundering case, is that he apparently sold his wife's RV to one of his campaign donors for $50,000, and then he turned around and sold it again, like less than a year later, for like $26,000.
Yep, there we go. Yep, that's
and
what I'm talking about.
A huge giveaway.
Yep, that's what I'm talking about. That, I mean, unless the guy ran it into the ground for a year here.
Maybe, but he wouldn't have been able to sell it for even $26,000. Like, just think of how much value vehicles lose when you just drive them off the lot. You may have just bought a $25,000 car, but you drive it 100 meters, and it's only going to be worth, at most, $17,500.
Unless you're Ryan Zinke, then you sell it for twice as much to a campaign donor. Jesus.
Go ahead.
He also then would have been the main cabinet head to... he's the one looking into these...
Bears Ears and that.
Bears Ears and these changing of how the national monuments are... just the size of them or what you can do in them and around them. He got a little flack for... saying we should drill offshore around the more offshore around the country, and then they're like, but not Florida, right in front of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
I don't know if that went everywhere because every other senator and congressman is like, whoa, what? Is there any? Yeah. So anything else about him?
Let's see. He one of the most obscure financial disclosures. It's only like 9 pages.
Okay.
And he doesn't list a lot of assets. But, okay, so he has an art collection, an auto collection. He has residential real estate that he doesn't list a value for. Like, in 2 different cases, he apparently owns a bunch of real estate in Whitefish, Montana, which, not entirely unsurprising, but he apparently has no value.
Well, that's wonderful.
Maybe I'll offer him $1 for his house.
That's wonderful. Just waiting for the right offer on it.
Right. Yeah, it's... And to go about talk about that Bears Ears thing for a second, they apparently found emails from like a month before he made that decision that he was coordinating with the people that would benefit most from that decision.
Which was it oil drilling?
It was oil drilling and uranium mining.
I was gonna say, and uranium mining, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, who's next?
Yeah, so he's great. I think Mnuchin. Can we do Mnuchin? Everyone's favorite.
Oh my god,
Come
this
on.
guy.
People love Mnuchin.
I mean, the biggest, not scandal, but scandal was him and his wife Louise Linton at the U.S. Mint holding up a...
Yes, it was meme-worthy.
Yeah.
Bond villain style. Yep. They and his wife got attention for having the most elitist, classist Instagram rant since.
Oh, right.
I don't know, that wasn't a Kardashian or something, I guess. So yeah, but what
well, let's see. Before he became Secretary of Treasury, he was involved in One West Bank, which bilked hundreds of thousands of people in California out of their homes. amongst other things.
Mm-hmm. That's probably one of the banks in this deregulation bill, which we might talk about later, that is getting better treatment, potentially, in the bill.
It absolutely would be. It's one of those mid-tier banks, but if memory serves, it got bought up by somebody.
Oh, okay.
One bank. All right, so Steve Mnuchin. He was involved in a bunch of the travel gate controversies.
Yes.
He and his wife went to, what was it?
They went to Fort Knox to watch the eclipse.
Yes, right. I was trying to think I was thinking Fort Campbell, but yeah. And he was like, "Oh, I'm from New York and California. I don't care about seeing the eclipse." Then why did you go there at exactly the time when there was going to be an eclipse and go to a place where there was totality? Oh, and then he took his wife to Europe on their honeymoon on a government plane because he, quote, needed secure communications, unquote.
Yeah. Which,
it's like, oh no, I have to fly in a private government plane. I need to.
The way I understand it is, there's some basis in truth to that. The Secretary of the Treasury,
I mean, he is on the National Security
but he doesn't need like
Principals Committee.
Yeah, but he doesn't need access to it like 100% of the time. And
right, and he's in Europe where we have secure compartmentalized information facilities, like in at least every major capital in our embassy, and then probably some other ones.
Yeah,
like, I know we have at least a constellation of National Security Agency bases in England you could probably wander onto if you needed to have a secure conversation.
Yeah, I think like the Inspector General or ethics lawyer or something for the Treasury Department said, yeah, he didn't really need to do that. So, I don't know. Hopefully he's stopped since then. I don't know.
And then I think he took a couple of other flights.
I'm sure. Is there just Mr. Burns left?
Maybe. Who else?
Right. Oh, no, we did.
We did Zinke. Oh, Wilbur Ross, right.
There's DeVos.
Oh,
okay, we have
Betsy
DeVos,
Shulkin.
Right. Let's do DeVos. She's fun.
Okay.
She's everyone's second favorite, I think.
She has a whole website. Like, you can go to Senator Warren's webpage, just search for DeVos Watch, and she has a whole website dedicated to, like, just the terrible decisions that she's been making as Secretary of
yeah, there it is. I'm
Education.
On it. Wonderful. Wow, there's like every couple weeks there's a different one. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
She is prolific, but she has 108 pages in her financial disclosure. 108 pages. Let's see. Let me scroll through it. Her husband apparently works for RDV Corporation. Wait, Richard DeVos Corp. I don't understand what that is. He's chairman of a company named after him. Anyways, the number of line items in her assets goes to scrolling. All right, we're down to 30-some. Still scrolling on page 40 now. Still scrolling.
It sounds like they were thorough. I mean, they knew teachers would be looking into this, so they were covering themselves, not admitting any...
50.1. So it's about 40-some pages of assets. And, of course, she lists all of the income amounts for almost all of the assets. And how much they're worth.
So I hear a lot about... she has ties to student loan. Is that student loan companies? Is that a direct tie or a family tie? Or
well, the direct family tie is that her family, the Prince DeVos regime in Michigan, has been particularly involved in the charter school movement out there. And for our listeners, most of the people involved in charter schools are grifters. They are outright taking public funds to do things that the public could do better for cheaper. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just a way of privatizing another government service so people like her can make a lot of money off of it.
Yeah, and they're changing regulations that could lead to more fraud and predatory loaning in the student loan field. And Yeah, it's not she's not acting as a defender of public education. I think would be the best
30,
way to
31, 32. I'm sorry, I'm counting up her endnotes. Because, like, a lot of these disclosure forms, they say, like, oh, we'll put more information about this in the endnotes, and she has about 40 pages of endnotes describing the various companies that she's involved in.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she's one of the cabinet officials who didn't need to be involved in Travelgate because she always flies on her personal private jet everywhere she goes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
All right.
Then we have Shulkin, who inspired all this.
Yeah. David Shulkin.
Who's actually the only holdover from Obama. Worth pointing out.
And he is horribly corrupt, right?
I don't know what he did before Trump, but he jumped on the bandwagon at least when Trump took over.
Yeah,
I mean, he might have before as well, but
no, that guy was probably involved in that shit during Obama's administration, right?
Well, I mean, I think the Obama people were more careful about things, but yeah, I mean, unless it really was like, well, I have a new boss who doesn't give a shit if I come in late. You know, he just totally changed his operating habits. I mean, I'd imagine there was something going on before. But now, what's been going on recently?
I was actually just looking at his financial disclosure. Apparently, before he became the head of the VA, let me count the number of companies. He is a advisory board member on a bunch of different health companies, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, almost all of his positions involved some kind of healthcare group, ranging from United Healthcare to Spectra MD to Open Doctor Incorporated to Mount Sinai College of Medicine. Or wait, he's a professor of medicine there? As he's making money off of all of this? Wow, interesting.
That almost seems... well, I don't know. I mean, at some level you have to get people who know about the industry.
I guess, but professors have to have some kind of outside work, right?
Especially in Wisconsin, by the way. That's another show.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's a fine line between, it's hard to not take anyone who's been involved in industry and companies. The problem is, okay, this will be a little bit, we weren't going to do too much like opinion, tell me what to think, but I kind of have something to say about this, because it's hard to not take anyone who's been involved in the industry that this is regulating, but obviously you have to be really careful. So let's take something like the VA. If you have a strong stance that the VA is going to be a single-payer, government-run organization, no effing around here, okay, fine, you can take someone from industry, and as long as their boss, who at the time was Obama, is like, no, you're not going to privatize the VA, you fucking idiot, then it should be pretty fine. The problem is when you have now Trump and these idiots who are talking about things like privatizing or giving people vouchers, like, I can imagine this Shulkin guy drooling and thinking of all the boards he's been on and everything once that talk starts happening. And not saying he's done it, I don't know what actions he's taken towards that, but there has been talk about it. I know there's people in the cabinet who are interested in things like that, in privatizing VA care.
That was going to be one of his signature plans, to privatize the VA. Interestingly, he has the most number of cash bank accounts with, 11? And somewhere between 5 million and 20 million in cash on hand.
Professor money.
Yeah, that good professor money.
Yeah. One of those millionaires professors.
And he's got a lot of investments. Like lots and lots of investments in various companies.
Yeah.
Interestingly, apparently when he found out, or when his internal corruption was revealed, he ended up putting an armed guard outside his office on the 10th floor of the VA. It got to the point where he was, in increasing fits of paranoia, he kept certain people from getting up to the 10th floor that he thought were trying to undercut him.
Well, we haven't even talked about what brought about the trouble. So he wanted the government to pay for his trip to Europe, I believe, and importantly his wife to go to Europe. Mm-hmm. So he
10-day European vacation.
Yeah,
right?
He made up a bunch of lies and they changed official documents.
Yeah, they manufactured email that showed that she had a legitimate purpose to be there after the fact.
I mean, they had a little husband and wife criminal conspiracy to get around ethics rules.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still there today in that job. I mean, he didn't even deny it, right?
Nope. I mean, how can you deny it? It's obvious. They got pictures of him at Wimbledon.
Yeah, he didn't deny it. And then he says he's going to have... Didn't he use the word purge of the department?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wants to...
He's bad. He's. There's a reason he inspired this segment.
Whole segment, yeah.
I think that's probably the most blatant... maybe not the worst in the end, but the most blatant issue of corruption we've seen. All right, and now...
For the coup de grace, right? Wilbur Ross, whose name showed up in the Paradise Papers for how much he was hiding his money. Mm-hmm. And also, as an interesting aside, none of these people are listing foreign bank accounts. If they claim they have any bank accounts, it's a U.S. bank account in cash.
Is that because they think they don't have to because no one will check? Or do you think they just don't have
And typically they... Well, no, I'm almost sure they do, but a lot of the
Especially
times
like
these...
Chow.
Yeah, they'll have front companies, like LLCs that are owned by another company that actually holds the account.
Yeah.
Alright, so yeah, Wilbur Ross apparently has huge ties to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bring up his financial disclosure. One of the most interesting I've ever read. His financial disclosure is 57 pages long.
Okay.
But the funniest part is that, you know how I've been carefully noting how people are listing like the value and income type that they get from these various investments?
Yeah.
His fucking financial disclosure reads like a lot of these don't have any value listed to them and no income listed. It's like, fucking prove it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, is that just... Yeah, I mean...
It's just bare. Like, it's just... He's got all the companies listed, like... And they're all... A lot of them start with WLR, his own fucking initials.
Sounds like Trump, looking at that one from Trump. Everything has Trump in the name over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. He's got things like WLR, China Energy Associates, WLR, China Energy Infrastructure Fund, LP. Yeah, Longmen Group Limited, which is another Chinese company. Yeah, and as I said, none of these are listing any income. Like, this guy might be dead broke, but obviously we know better.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think he may have been the one rumored to be the richest, but maybe they didn't, there wasn't enough information to...
Yeah, he's strangely prideful of his net worth. Like, he took issue when Forbes took him off its list of billionaires following his divestment of assets to get into the cabinet.
I can see why him and Trump get along.
Uh-huh. All right, let's see. He has over $50 million in cash. It doesn't even list a bank account. It just says cash. Over $50 million.
It's in the hot tub.
It's under the mattress. How are you getting interest off the shit under the mattress? Because he's also listing between $5,000 and $15,000 in interest on that.
He just is a walking bank, isn't he?
Maybe.
I mean, I think the before his nomination, the thing brought up is how he was on the board for Deutsche Bank or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Let's look at his board memberships. Scroll back up to the top. Above his 50 or 30 pages of assets without value. All right, so let's go through the corporations he was on. Investco. He was CEO of Investco, apparently. Navigator Holdings is the one that he's involved with, with some Russian oligarchs with ties to the Kremlin.
Oh.
Let's see. He's a director at Sun Bank Corp. That's one of those companies or banks that had to spend a bunch of money to.
That's the Atlanta one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or no, New Jersey.
Okay.
Bank United. Let me see. ArcelorMittal. He's a director of that. They're a huge metal company. Oizumi Manufacturing, also involved heavily in steel because they're Oizumi Manufacturing. It's an air conditioner parts company based in Japan.
Okay.
Bank of Cyprus, of course. Navigator Holdings, Aquin.
Oh, that's what it was. I'm sorry, not Deutsche Bank. It was Cyprus. That was his. Yeah, that was
the
the
Bank of
shady one.
Cyprus. He was director and vice chairman of the Bank of Money Laundering.
Yeah. I'm in the money laundering department.
We have the best money laundering.
Come to Cyprus for all your money laundering needs.
Which is what a lot of people do, especially if they even want to make legitimate investments into Russia, because if your investments are in Cyprus, the Russian government can't be like, yeah, that's ours now.
Oh, okay. So it goes both ways, because I know money coming out of Russia goes through there, too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Well, a lot of the... if memory serves, there's like some pretty serious treasury sanctions on some major Russian banks that keep them basically out of the international financial system.
Well, it doesn't keep him from talking to Jared Kushner, but yes.
No, of course not.
In the White House. But yes, yes. There are a number of sanctions on Russia.
All right, let me count the number of companies. Well, just on from his positions, how many of these have anything to do with steel? ArcelorMittal is just listed as steel. He's got a couple, 1, 2, 3 auto parts companies, shipping management, bank, shipping services, bank corporation, more auto parts. Yeah. Lots and lots of auto parts. Holy cow. So yeah, he's up to his flapping chin in metal.
No,
and its use.
But wouldn't that be working against that interest with the steel tariffs?
Well, apparently he divested a bunch of money out of them, but of course.
Okay. Wait, let me sell all this off, and then I'll push for steel tariffs.
Yeah.
That's great.
So he's and maybe he might be the richest one on paper, because it's not even Betsy DeVos has he has at least 2 different accounts with at least $50 million in them.
Okay.
And he makes millions upon millions of dollars off of all of his WLR businesses.
Okay. We don't know exactly how many millions, though.
Right, because these financial disclosures aren't precise in that respect.
Okay. Well, that's been our little tour of the cabinet. We didn't have time to go over the cabinet level positions, who are not the cabinet, but they're the cabinet.
Right, we don't have time to go into Nikki Haley's extramarital affairs.
Yep, and her pay-for-play politics. Dan Coates' his homophobia. Mick Mulvaney, we have gone over before. Scott Pruitt, first-class corrupt individual there. Mike Pompeo, possibly tied up with the DeVos Prince private intelligence thing. John Kelly, secret racist. And Linda McMahon, just involved in fucking wrestling.
Can we just say John Kelly is not just a racist?
Well, now I meant like when he started secret racist.
Yeah.
Now he lost the secret part of the title.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
The only thing I can say about not Wilbur Ross, but Mad Dog Mattis is that at one point during the Gulf War, he was like, "I enjoy killing people." Yeah, but I understand that was a motivational speech to Marines, but it doesn't make it any less loathsome.
Yeah, I mean that's like Patton type talk, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean it's
Well, and he was he was in charge of the 1st Marine Division, which has been accused of atrocities in the Battle of Fallujah. If you remember, that battle started off with 4 American contractors getting hung up from a bridge.
Ugh.
And then the Marines went in to pacify the situation. So yeah, there's blood, real blood on some of these people's hands.
And that's not even mentioning the series of mysterious murders involving Betsy DeVos. I'm just kidding. No.
What?
I'm going to edit out the just kidding part, though, and we'll get in trouble for that.